What's up guys, Loki here, back at it again with another YouTube video. Today we have a video from my boy AJ. This video is actually doing pretty well. It does need more views though, I'm not gonna lie, just because this is like no one else is doing this. No one else has gone through this much effort explaining weakness types, and if an enemy has a certain weakness, then more often than not they also have this weakness or this weakness. No one else is making spreadsheets like this, so definitely give AJ a subscribe and like this video. The video is doing very well, considering it's doing well. 1.2k views, and then he has 92 subscribers, so it's actually going above and beyond. So it is getting shared by the algorithm, but I think it does need more. It just deserves more views. So and AJ has great content. He has fantastic content, so definitely give this man a subscribe and like this video and leave a comment as well, because that definitely helps you. The algorithm's evil. like sometimes videos pop off, but like it's really due to you guys like leaving your comments, your likes. So like I want you guys to know from the bottom of my heart that I do appreciate that. I see every single one. I read every single comment, because I'm still relatively small. I read every single comment, so I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much for the growth that we have seen. But yeah, let's get right into AJ's video. I'll chime in if I have anything to say.
Welcome back to the channel. My name is AJ, and today we're going to be talking about why you do not need a DPS for every single element in Honkaistarrail.
I'm going to give you 5 seconds to subscribe.
Now, there are a few things I want to share with you guys from some findings that I did. Now, don't mind the noise going on in the background, but what I did is I took all of the enemies, literally every single one. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, took all the elements, and what I did is I said, okay, opened up a spreadsheet, and I said, okay, let's take.
My man made a whole spreadsheet. Also, there's a lot of enemies coming in 2.2, like a lot of different enemies. So I wonder if AJ's gonna update this. Like, I'm sure this is saved, right? So I'm sure he's gonna update it. But yeah, this is interesting. 42 total enemies with fire weakness, 42 with imaginary weakness, 18 boss / elites with fire weakness is crazy. Like, if you ask someone off the top of their head without looking, how many enemies in Honkaistarrail have fire weakness, and is it more than ice or lightning, they would probably say lightning would be the most. I feel like your average person would be like, oh, probably lightning. I see lightning most of the time, but I think it's just because of Pinnacle. It's actually like 42 total enemies have fire weakness, with boss and elites being at 18 is kind of crazy.
Take every single element, let's list them down. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do total number of enemies, and we're going to say, okay, how many enemies have the fire weakness? So that's what I did. I went through this and found all the enemies that have fire weakness. Then what I did was I filtered this down even more, and I did the elite enemies and the bosses, and I did the exact same thing. Is I accounted for how many boss / elite enemies are there with the fire weakness, wind or ice, wind, and so forth, right? And these are the numbers that I came up with based off of the findings of me just counting up going through every single one and be like, okay, this one has fire, this one has fire, this one has fire, and I would put them down, okay? And then for my last process, what I did is I said, okay, let's take a specific element and let's see how many boss / elite enemies, because those are the ones that are typically in, for example, MOC or pure fiction, right? How many of these boss / elite enemies have, for example, a lightning weakness? And
right, so what he means by this is like how many fire enemies in the game also have lightning, how many fire enemies in the game also have imaginary, how many fire enemies in the game also have physical, quantum, wind, ice, and then obviously 0 for fire, because if they have fire weakness, then you know they're not gonna have fire twice. But yeah,
which ones of these that have lightning weakness also have a fire weakness? And I said, okay, let's go through 6 enemies that already have a lightning weakness, already have fire. 5 of them have ice, and I went so on and so forth, all the way down through the list of all the elements. And I did that for every single one. Now, if you see a 0 here, it just means that, if an enemy already has a lightning weakness, of course it's not going to have 2 lightning weaknesses. So that's why I put a 0 there. Pretty self-explanatory. Now, here is where the fun begins. This is where it gets really fun, guys. So I'm going to give you guys a personal example. So this is a little bit more relatable. This right here, this screen of the owned characters, this is my main account. But before I picked up Acheron, okay, I did this exact same process of elimination. But with my free-to-play account, right, the only characters that I own on my free-to-play account that are main DPS characters are Clara and Dr. Ratio. Now, I do have a Himiko and I do have a Welt, but as far as for high damage DPSs, Clara and Dr. Ratio kind of do more damage than, for example, Welt and Himiko. Obviously, Himiko will thrive if I have a character like Topaz and stuff like that, but mainly, Dr. Ratio's doing more damage than, a pretty well invested Dr. Ratio's doing more damage than Welt and Himiko. Let's just be honest, guys. So, what I did is I said, okay.
Well, actually, my Himiko does 500,000 damage. I get why he said that, because there will be people in the comment section that are just like, well, actually, but like, yeah, more. I completely agree. More often than not, Ratio is going to be doing more damage than Welt. Crit Welt does exist though, and I have messed around with Crit Welt. It's very good, but I'd say you never mind. I'm not going to get into that, but yeah, let's continue.
Okay. Well, I do not. Well, let's track back for a second. Let's go and look at the enemies. If you look at the current MOC, Servog is one of the enemies on the floors, or also like this really annoying chef. We'll just call him Sanji Rex, the Sanji T-Rex, right? This guy really freaking annoying, and Himiko sucks in single target, or this guy also sucks in single target. But if I need an imaginary weak enemy on the other side, right? I'm not going to use my imaginary character on this one if I have a fire character. So, I am losing out on elemental weakness. Now, I do have Clara, but the problem is, for example, this.
It's funny, and this isn't really like a leak or anything, but on the test server or the in the beta, I've recently built I crowned my Gwenhyphen, because I was like, bro, I'm tired of not having enough fire coverage. So I crowned my Gwenhyphen, gave her like ridiculous artifacts, just to, I mean, granted, this guy he gets destroyed by Dot, right? He gets absolutely decimated and he blows up on himself. But I did have to build my Gwenhyphen for a pure fiction that you guys will be experiencing in the future. And also for this guy, just to apply more dots.
Ones on the other side. Well, I don't own lightning, I don't own a really good single target fire DPS character, and I don't own a good wind DPS character. I don't own Blade on my other account. I do not own Black Swan or Jing Yuan. Who's the other lightning character? Kafka. Don't own any of them. And unfortunately, I want to build up follow-up attack team, so I'm skipping Acheron as much as it pains me to skip her. On my main account, I do own her, so I get to, play with her still. But on my free-to-play account, don't own Acheron. But in the future, I do probably plan on picking up Acheron just because she is very strong. Now, the reason why I decided to make this video is because I watched a video put out by Vars2, and he's talking about how Honkaistarrail is kind of an expensive game because it's not like Genshin Impact where you can just throw some elements together and you can rely on the reactions as the core to deal a lot of damage, or you can't dodge. There's no dodging mechanics, right? And so in this game, right, having the correct corresponding elements is quite important. And so he stresses the fact that, yes, if you are picking up or you want elemental coverage,
especially when it comes to like MOC floor 11 or 12. I mean, I've run into this problem personally where the first couple of enemies I just absolutely destroy, and then either the boss enemy or the elite next to the boss. I mean, usually the elite next to the boss is one of the elites from the first cycle, but normally the boss won't have either weakness of the first two elites. So then I can run into that problem and I don't have enough coverage, or the character that would have their weakness type isn't like that great of a DPS. So then like I suffer when it comes to like cycle clearage. But like for instance, right, let's just take pure fiction. Argenti is so good in on the floor 4, the last floor of the current pure fiction. So good, right? Everything has physical weakness, and then there's also if you use your alt, it advances you forward, like perk that you can take, which would make him very, very good. You just pair him with like Teen Yoon, and he has like the double alt. Oh, that makes me wonder. It's a random tangent, but it makes me wonder if he double alts there, does it actually count as 2 and advance him 50% instead of 25%? I wonder. But again, like I'm probably gonna skip Boot Hill, maybe, we'll see. And I don't have Argenti, so that physical coverage I don't have, right? But I do have like Clara, like E2. But what am I gonna do? Run a fast Clara, you know? So it's like it's very tricky. It's very, very, very tricky. But this is where this table comes in handy, just because physical enemies also have, more often than not, imaginary weakness or ice weakness, you know? So having that coverage, I do see this a lot too, especially in the current pure fiction. Like a lot of the like I'm pretty sure the enemies that are weak to physical also have ice, which means if I'm in a pure fiction scenario, I can just bring like Herta or something, right? Or like Jean Leo.
You know, eventually you might need to pick up every single element. Now, here is what my thought process was. Well, okay, if that is the case, then let's look at these elements, right? There are some enemies that appear more often within a specific element. Like if we take, for example, fire. A lot of the times, a lot of fire enemies, or let's just say lightning enemies, have wind weakness or fire weakness. For example, Yang Ching also has lightning, also has wind weakness. For example, let's take this guy, fire and wind, right? If we look at this guy, fire and lightning, right?
Right, exactly. So if they have fire weakness, more often than not, they're going to have lightning or wind, with the exception being Branya and Argenti. I believe they're one of the only two. There might be another enemy, but more often than not, they are going to have lightning or that wind weakness.
Right? And so fire and lightning, right? What I did was I plugged these numbers into this chart, and these will tell you the exact numbers. Now, to my surprise, I did not know that fire enemy or enemies with the fire weakness, right, were the majority. Lightning is very close in second place, and then tied for third is actually ice and physical, as far as for the enemies that have the most common weakness out of all of them, right? That is according to these numbers. Now, what I'm going to tell you guys is I actually think that there are 3 elements that give you really good elemental coverage, and if you own these elements, you probably don't need to pick up the other ones. Now, it can depend on which characters you already own, and you might not need to pick up these other elements because these other elements overlap, if that makes sense. If we look at this, for example, lightning, right? Lightning pairs very well with fire, ice, and wind, right? Now, we're not going to talk about quantum because quantum is kind of like the third child. They get special treatment. They have mono quantum, and so mono quantum, basically you can just force quantum onto any side that you want as long as you have Silver Wolf. So that is why I'm not going to talk about quantum. But if we look at this, even imaginary, right? Lightning.
And it's interesting, right? Because you can see quantum's kind of like really low on every single one. But I think it's because the devs had in mind, like, okay, we're going to make quantum show up very like not that often, just because mono quantum will be a thing in the future. If you did pick up Silver Wolf, and you can just slap on. Like I had to do that recently for a future MOC that I was like struggling with on the first side, and I was just like, dude, what do I do here? So I just ran mono quantum, and it worked.
Covers a lot of these elements. Same thing with fire. Fire actually covers a decent amount of these elements as well, right? Fire happens to have other enemies that pair with 7 enemies have within the elite and boss mobs also have ice weakness, wind weakness, or lightning weakness, or physical or imaginary, which is pretty good, right? And so when you are looking to pick up a DPS character, this is what I would suggest you do, right? Is I would suggest you do some process of elimination, right? I look at my account, my free to play account, and I have an imaginary character and I have a physical character, right? Which means that imaginary covers, right, a lot of lightning weak enemies and a lot of wind and ice and some fire, right? Imaginary is pretty versatile. It doesn't cover quantum, but quantum is that exception. Now, I do have physical, which physical does cover like ice, which is actually quite helpful, and some imaginary. Now that is not very useful to me because I already have Doctor Ratio, and Doctor Ratio is great at covering imaginary, right? But the thing is that when I want to do, for example, a boss like the Sanji T-Rex, right? I don't have literally lightning. It's a 5-star character, lightning, fire, or wind.
Ooh, you know what? He said he didn't have Kafka. Now it makes sense why that enemy is really annoying for him. Now it makes sense why he probably gets flamethrowered constantly. Yeah, I have Kafka, and most of the time, like I'll just run Kafka by herself with like Teen Yoon and like Ho for energy, right? And just with Ron May, and then I just pretty much make this man blow up on himself. So that's how I usually handle the dinosaur, and it's usually like if it's appearing in MOC, that is a 0 cycle easily. Adventurine's weaknesses are disgusting. These are disgusting. I mean, I know this is a random tangent, but like, it's probably because he's just preservation. He's so tanky, it's insane.
Right? And so, if I was to pick up another character, I'd probably pick up a lightning character because they can either fill in the role of covering the fire element, the ice element, or the wind element. Or if I pick up a fire, then they cover ice, wind, or lightning, right? Which is also very, very useful. So I'm going to use this as an example right here. If, say, you need coverage for these 3 elements, so wind, lightning, or fire, right? I personally am probably going to either pick up a lightning or I'm going to pick up a fire element because fire element covers the weaknesses of that I don't own. I don't own a DPS in the ice category and I don't own a DPS in the wind category, and it does very good coverage with 6 elite or boss enemies that have lightning weakness. So fire covers these 3 elements very, very well. I don't need to worry about physical because imaginary covers 7 out of the what is that, 16 elite but other bosses in its type, right? So that's pretty good coverage. And
Yeah.
so I will probably pick up fire because fire covers the weakness that I don't own, which is lightning or wind. And so that is why, for example, I would pick up fire. Or I could pick up lightning, which in my opinion is probably the best bet because Acheron is currently being rerun. And most of the boss enemies, right? If we look at some of these enemies, a lot of them, right, have lightning and fire weakness, right? Servalg, lightning, fire, and wind. Those 3 elements I don't own, but if I picked up myself an Acheron, I would have the coverage of those elements. Just like lightning has pretty decent coverage for other, like I don't have an ice DPS, but lightning covers also ice as well. It can cover ice elements. So
Yeah.
that is why I wanted to make this chart. Hopefully it was useful to you guys. I'm going to link it down in the description below so you guys can check it out for yourself and say, okay, these are the elements that these elements cover, and these are the spots that I'm missing, right? Pick one of these and be like, okay, I'm missing one of these, so I pick up this element. Hopefully this video is useful to you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.
All right, we let my man cook. Yo, another video from AJ. Very good video. Very good video. Incredible. Give this man a follow. Check out his content for sure. But yeah, if you guys enjoy this type of content, let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.